Good morning, everyone. So this is a short video on how to prepare for a report on your mediation analysis, particularly how to prepare your tables as well as how to write a report. So in this example, we have three variables, which are mental health, dispositional forgiveness, and positive affect. So the model is that, or suggests that, or the hypothesized model is that dispositional forgiveness has a positive effect on mental health, and that this positive effect is mediated by positive affect. So if you can imagine uh, the diagram. So we have this positional forgiveness here. We have mental health. So this positional forgiveness, being forgiving, having that trait leads to better mental health, and that this relationship can be accounted for by the mediating effect of positive affect. So positive affect serves as our mediator. So the research conceptualization may be something like, if the person has that trait of being forgiving, um, when we forgive, there might be literature suggesting that this brings about kind of relief in some of our negative feelings, no? And therefore we are more likely to experience positive emotions. And of course, having positive emotions, there is some evidence that suggests that that can be beneficial for our mental health. So that's how the model looks like. What you're seeing in the screen right now is are the JASP output. So I tried to run the analysis in JASP and also in Jamovi, and the results are identical. But in here, what you're seeing specifically is the output from JASP. So we have here our bivariate correlations using Pearson R correlation. And then we have our parameter estimates using JASP, for the direct effect, for the indirect effect, and for the total effect. And I tried, please take note that the estimates here are standardized regression estimates. So we selected that from the options in JASP so that these values are in beta weights, instead of your unstandardized regression coefficients. And then to simplify these tables, I simplified it by doing so. So for mediation, you typically only need two tables. So one table for your preliminary correlation analysis, and then another table that shows your mediation analysis. You might also want to include a figure, the path diagram, which is also available in JASP. So this one, you can also show that. But sometimes tables are sufficient in terms of describing what happened or the result of your analysis. So as we can see in the bivariate correlations, all of the variables are positively correlated with one another, although I'm a bit worried because the correlations are rather high. So I don't know exactly what that means. There might be some multicollinearity issues, although I wasn't able to check that. And I guess this doesn't happen every time. So if I were to kind of do this again, I think I'll be checking if there are issues with regard to multicollinearity. But for the meantime, let's assume that there's no multicollinearity issues. So this is how we simplified, of course, the bivariate correlations. And then in here, we have the result of the mediation analysis. So I only included essentially the total effect. So these values, the standardized regression coefficient, standard error, the lower and upper confidence intervals of this regression coefficient. Let me zoom in. How do you zoom in? View. Oops. Wait. Okay. So I hope you can see this better. So these these intervals are the intervals for this. And then, of course, we have our z obtained z value, no, and the p value associated with the z value. So the total effect, I got these from this table here, although I did rearrange it. The confidence interval, I placed it in between the standard error and the z. I wanted it closer to the estimate. But yeah, but that's pretty much the only change in terms of the arrangement of the values I made. And then, so what is the total effect again? So this is the effect of forgiveness on mental health prior to the mediation, right? So that's the total effect. And as what we have discussed, the total effect is actually a composite of the indirect effect and the direct effect, in such a way that actually if you add these tama ba? If you add, it'll total to the total effect. Okay. So this is the total effect, represents the effect of forgiveness on mental health prior to the mediation. And then, of course, we have the indirect effect. Now, what happens when we account for the positive affect, no, as a mediator? So, as what we have discussed, so if this is the model, so prior to the mediation, this represents the total effect, okay, which is your path C. And then when we run the mediation, so if we include the mediator there, that generates two paths, path A and path B. So this is path A, and this one is path B. And there are coefficients that represent these relationships. Now, unfortunately, we don't have that in the JASP output. But if you're, well, actually we do have, no, and you can see that here, no, in the model. So the correlation or the regression coefficient for path A is 0.58, no, and the regression coefficient for path B, which is the effect of positive affect on mental health, is 0.33. But if you want to know if these are significant, then you might want to look into the result generated in Jamovi, which gives us those information. Although the thing about Jamovi is that these estimates are unstandardized regression estimates. Anyway, so so going back, the value that you're seeing here, which is 0.19, is the product of A and B. So when you multiply this coefficient with this coefficient, then what you should get would be 0.191. All right, and then of course this is the confidence interval of 0.191, and this is of course the p-value, suggesting that the indirect effect is significant. Plus, of course, 0 is not a possibility between these intervals. And finally, the direct effect. So this would be the effect of forgiveness on mental health after accounting for mediation. So that would be not necessarily the residue, but essentially that would be the effect of forgiveness on mental health that is beyond what is explained or what can be explained by positive affect. And we refer to this as C prime, in our model. So that would still be this arrow, but under the condition that the mediator is there in the model. Right, so we call that as C prime, or in notation form, C apostrophe. And as we can see, it is still the direct effect, the remaining effect of forgiveness on mental health is still significant. So this is the regression coefficient that represents this effect. Okay. So in summary, what can we say? So number one, we have evidence to suggest that yes, forgiveness or having dispositional forgiveness does positively affect mental health. And we have evidence that this positive effect is mediated by positive affect, meaning to say there is evidence that yes, when you forgive, you experience more positive affect because of being forgiving, and having positive affect contributes to mental health. But beyond that, it seems that forgiveness still has a direct effect on mental health. Although one can argue that direct effect might also be, or it's quite possible that other mediators can account for that. So if you're doing this research and you want to expand the model, then maybe you can propose other possible mediators, and perhaps some of those direct effect of forgiveness on mental health can still be accounted for by other mediators. But that would be for your next project. And this is now the simple result that we wrote for our analysis. So as usual, we begin with the objective. Although to avoid being redundant, normally I ask students to remind the reader what is the objective, remind what the hypothesis is. But I left the reminder about the hypothesis because the reader can assume that this, or the reader can assume from this statement what your hypothesis is. So I said the study aims to test if positive affect mediates the relationship between dispositional forgiveness and mental health. So I think readers can parse out from that statement that your hypothesis is that positive affect do mediate the relationship between dispositional forgiveness and mental health. And then after that, we talked about the preliminary analysis using Pearson R correlation, or bivariate correlation. So I said initial Pearson correlation results show that all variables have strong positive relationship with each other. So I did not bother with reporting again the values. One, because it's already available in the table, on the table, so the reader can just refer to those. Plus, it's just a preliminary analysis, so it's not really the actual meat of the results. Okay. And then for the third statement, I reminded the reader of what we actually used to test the mediation. So I said multiple regression was used to test the mediation model. And then we proceeded with the results. So the results basically reports all of the effects, from beginning with total, then the indirect effect. This is actually your test of mediation, percentage mediation, which I'll talk about in a little while, and then the remaining effect or the direct effect. So for the results, I said table 2 reveals that dispositional forgiveness positively predicts mental health. So this statement is referring to the total effect. So this one. And these values that we see here are from these values. So a regression coefficient of 0.726 with confidence interval between 0.668 and 0.733, a z of 38.353, and a p-value less than 0.001. And then I continue. Furthermore, positive affect significantly mediates this relationship. This relationship, of course, referring to the relationship between forgiveness and mental health. So in this statement, saying that positive affect significantly mediates the relationship between forgiveness and mental health, I'm drawing that from this result, so the indirect effect. And these values that you can see here are the ones which are reflected in this row of the table. Okay, so take note of the information or the statistical expressions that I have included. So the beta weight, the 95% confidence interval, the z-score, and the p-value. And then I talked about how much of the effect of forgiveness on mental health is accounted for by positive affect. So I said it is estimated that positive affect accounts for 26.4% of dispositional forgiveness's effect on mental health. So where did we get this 26.4% mediation? So it's not available in JASP, but if you run this in Jamovi, you actually have a result for that. So this one, percent mediation, 26.4. But you can actually manually compute for this by taking the regression coefficient 0.1 for the indirect effect 0.191 divided by the regression coefficient for the main effect 0.726 0.726 equals, okay, so equals, that's the value if we divide, and then if we multiply that by 100, because we're looking for the percentage there, 26.3. Not exact, but yeah, kind of close enough. But in this case, the one that I'm reporting here, 26.4, I got this actually from the Jamovi output. But even if you report 26.3, I think that's okay. Not much big of a difference. So in reporting for that, so I said it is estimated that positive affect accounts for 26.4% of dispositional forgiveness's effect on mental health. So again, that means to say that of this effect, how much of this is 1.91? Okay, so that is what you refer to by, or what you mean by percentage mediation. Um, so that means to say that positive affect seems to account for roughly 1/4 of the effect of forgiveness on mental health. Now, the remaining 3/4 would be the remaining direct effect. So that's the last thing that I uh, reported. No, I said, nevertheless, dispositional forgiveness still has a significant positive direct effect, with emphasis on the word direct effect, um, on mental health. No? And these are the values. So what is my basis for reporting that? This one, the direct effect. And we can see that these results are significant. Again, what would that mean? It might be that having a dispositional uh, uh, having the trait of being dispositional forgiveness does have a direct effect on mental health. Or another possible explanation would be that there might be other mediators that we haven't accounted for in our model. And what is the meaning of these results? So I wrote, these findings suggest that having the trait of being forgiving of others' transgressions, so that would be dispositional forgiveness, leads to the experience of more positive emotions. So that would refer to positive affect, which in turn results to better mental health. So that would be our outcome variable. And then to take account for the direct effect, I also said it should be noted, however, I'm not sure if I'm using a comma appropriately here, that being forgiving can lead to mental health beyond what could be explained by positive affect. And then maybe in your discussion, you might want to suggest that that future researchers examine other possible mediators. Okay, so again, let's read the report once again. The study aims to test if positive affect mediates the relationship between dispositional forgiveness and mental health. Initial Pearson-R correlation results show that all variables have strong positive relationship with each other. Multiple regression was used to test the mediation model. Table 2 reveals that dispositional forgiveness positively predicts mental health. Furthermore, positive affect significantly mediates this relationship. It is estimated that positive affect accounts for 26.4% of dispositional forgiveness's effect on mental health. Nevertheless, dispositional forgiveness still has a significant positive direct effect. These findings suggest that having the trait of being forgiving of others' transgressions lead to the experience of more positive emotions, which in turn results to better mental health. It should be noted, however, that being forgiving can lead to mental health beyond what could be explained by positive affect. Okay, so that's it. That is how you um, prepare for the simple report on mediation. Thanks.